Now, the next slide, please. Now, if you take the growth in the recent period, since 1990, you see an acceleration in growth compared to the previous period everywhere in South Asia, except that the Chinese did far better from 1990 on. And I could go backward to 1980 and you'll see the same thing. China grew much faster than South Asia as a whole, or East Asia grew much faster than South Asia as a whole. And that again is a fact that we have to keep in mind. Next slide. Now, the recent years, in the last 5 years, growth again, you see some slowing down after the financial crisis, but quick recovery from the financial crisis, and both China and India have recovered. And South Asia as a whole also the same story. But except that China, through conscious policy choice, and India not so much by policy choice, they have not gone back to the pre-financial crisis growth stage. They are recovered from the financial crisis, but not back to what they were in the few years prior to the crisis, and thereby hangs a tale with respect to what has not been done to resume and accelerate the growth in China. The other thing that I would like to note is a heterogeneity within South Asia of the growth record. Take Pakistan, for example. Pakistan had a remarkable performance prior to this period, and the period depicted here, and Pakistan's performance has been lackluster economically since that time. And there are many, many reasons why the heterogeneity in performance is there. Now, the China's growth, which I mentioned earlier, and also is growth in both in military strength and also economic strength, has an implication to the security problems that I will be touching on in a moment. Before I go to the security problem, I want to make 2 points, or one basic point, that in spite of the growth, in spite of the resurgence which you see in the last 2 decades or so, the South Asia is still very poor. China is poor also. So let's not kid ourselves into thinking we have suddenly become developed countries and our incomes are would take us out of the poverty the situation. And so this is one way of depicting it in terms of purchasing power parity. Per capita incomes, if you take South Asia as a whole, it's less than $5,000 in purchasing power parity terms. And so this is not a great performance in that sense. Second, even more so, if you look at it from the proportion of people who are below the poverty line, international poverty line, again of $1.25, which the World Bank uses, the poverty population is still substantial, except in China. Except China, you see the substantial share of the population. So the one takeaway from this is resurgence from a historical perspective is getting back what India, China, and South Asia were in more than 2 centuries ago, in one sense. On the other hand, this resurgence is yet to manifest itself into substantial proportion of the population being lifted out of an abject poverty. So that's the economic resurgence. And there are other aspects of economic resurgence if you want to look at inflation. We have the inflation problem is rearing its ugly head now, globally and in South Asia. More interestingly, this opening up to the rest of the world, South Asia now in recent years has rate of growth of exports which rivals East Asia. East Asia has had a long, the fast growth of its exports, but South Asia is coming close to that now, which is again a major difference. Lastly, on foreign direct investment, once again, compared to China, even India, which gets the larger share of foreign investment in South Asia, is nowhere near China. So that tells you also about what is it, the environment for foreign direct investment in China relative to what is the atmosphere in India and South Asia. Now, on the governance issues. Now, again, let me start with India. Those of you who may occasionally look at the Indian newspapers, you would know that currently newspapers are full of scams being investigated, and every day a new scam is discovered and a new committee is appointed, and so on and so forth. So if you read that, you would think there is nothing else happening in India except the scams and their investigation. But as we know, corruption, which is the scams are a manifestation of corruption, is not only in South Asia, but in China, importantly, and also elsewhere in the world. But except the form of corruption is very different in different contexts. And so it is a universal problem in one sense. So that's point number one. Point number two, you have to also think about what are the sources, why is it that corruption is showing up in a major way now. This, in the South Asian context at least, goes way back to their development strategies for the last 50, 60 years, with the state taking a major role in the economy, with state deciding on many things, including at one stage in India, if an entrepreneur wanted to invest and create additional capacity, first of all, he has to get permission from the government to invest. Second, if he wanted to import technology, he has to get a second permission. Third, if he wanted to go to the capital market to raise resources for investment, he has to go to the Capital Issues Controller. You could imagine the kind of the stranglehold that the government had in the decisions of the private sector, not to mention the restrictions not only at the central government level, at the state levels. So the World Bank's the Business Environment Index suggests, if you look at it, India is still a horror story, even after the opening, etc. It's not easy to open or close a business in India.